I know sometimes we go in and we just choose a factoring company. We don't pay very much attention to who the factoring company is, what that track record is, how long they've been in business. We don't pay very much attention to that. And when we don't, we can sometimes get factoring companies that are not really stable. Not to say that this is the case about this particular company, but there's a company called Core Fund Capital out of Texas. And they have informed their people that they're closing their doors, all of their employees, that they're going to be closing their doors, and they are responsible for about 350 carriers when it comes to providing factoring services. So now you have hundreds and hundreds of carriers that are not sure if they're going to get paid, are not sure if they're going to be able to get fuel. You know, can you imagine yourself being in that position? You are expecting that you have everything set up, you got your factoring company in place, and now you've been working, and there's a chance that you have invoices out there that are not going to get covered. That's a bad feeling, right? And you have carriers that have been calling and calling, trying to find out what's going on. Are they going to get paid? When are they getting paid? And they're not getting any answers because the doors are shut. And they basically shut down and they're not taking any phone calls. I did read in an article that a receiver had been set up for Core Fund Capital. And the receiver, who's assigned by the judge, he now has the authority to act on behalf of Core Fund. And what he can do now is go in and release those UCC1s, those notice of assignments, and then set up payment arrangements. Because what you're having brokers being called by truck drivers, and they're saying, hey, can you just pay me direct? And what the brokers are basically saying is that their hands are tied because those UCC1s are in place, those notice of assignments are in place. They can't go in and pay the driver because the notice of assignment is between them and the factoring company, right? The notice of assignment says that you've assigned your invoices to this factoring company. And they can't just, go with and say, hey, I'm just going to go and pay the carrier direct now that Core Fund is closed. They have to get all of that squared away through the receiver, and then they can start making payment arrangements. But these carriers have some very legitimate concerns, and I really hope they get paid. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't get paid, but I certainly am in the camp of those that are rooting for them and hoping that they get paid. And this is not just bad for the truck driver. It's bad for freight brokers as well, because if the freight broker is factored by that company, they'll go through the same problems. Just imagine if you got a call from your factoring company and they're shutting the doors, all the invoices that you owe through that factoring company now, you're responsible for that. So those drivers are calling you, wondering, hey, where's my money at? What's the deal? And your factoring company has shut its doors. So it's not just about truck drivers, it's all of us involved, the trucking industry, when we're talking about a factoring company going down like this. Here's what one of the director of operations for a broker said. He says, we work with a network of 50,000 trucking companies, 140 carriers in his database that factor their receivables with Core Fund Capital. And he's concerned about not being able to pay these carriers since he's had no communication with any of Core Fund's executives. He goes on to say, I had a carrier trying to get us to pay him directly. He called me a dozen times, but there's nothing we can do. Our hands are tied. He says, until we have a notice of assignment from Core Fund that this trucking company has gone to them for funding, and Core Fund sends us an invoice, which we will pay the same day, he says he really feels for those guys. There's nothing we can do until we have that in our hands. Once we get that, we can pay that invoice for the same day. And I understand what his feeling is about that. He feels bad for truck drivers, but legally, he can't just go in and bypass that notice of assignment and pay a carrier directly. That would be the wrong thing to do. So you feel bad, but your hands are really tied. So we want to make sure we're paying more attention to the factoring companies that we're employing, the companies that we're using their services. We need to make sure that we take a good long look at the factoring company. And you might have as an idea in your mind to say, you know what? I'm not going to have a factoring company relationship unless that company has X amount of years in business. You know, you have to decide that. Maybe you'll say it's a 10-year period because this company had been around since 2014. So they had some experience in the game, but two brothers founded the company. And then there was a spat, some type of dispute between those two brothers, and they closed the doors. But two people had a spat, and it affects hundreds and hundreds of people. So we want to be on top of our game. Make sure we are selecting solid factoring companies that's been in the game for some time and have a track record. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'll leave it there. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. For those of you that find yourselves a bit intrigued about the trucking industry, particularly about the freight broker business, where you can work from home without having to get in the truck, work from your computer, move loads, and make money, I'll leave you a free link in the description showing me in the office, going through the numbers, showing you exactly how the business works, but talking to customers doing it, talking to real shippers, talking to real carriers, setting freight up to give you a better understanding of how the business works before you decide to come into it. And then if you're interested in learning more about how much it's going to cost you to start your own freight broker business, well, I got you taken care of there here. Just check this free video out that I'm going to leave for you right here. So until the next time, I'll see you at the very top of the mountain because the bottom is much too crowded.